And to tell us more about this, Professor Cho Jung-hun from Ajou University joins us in the studio today. Welcome to the program.
Great to be here.
All right, so it looks like President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will be meeting each other sometime in May or early June, like we heard in the report. Now, it's interesting, though, that President Trump put a rubber stamp on this timeline when it was actually the same day that John Bolton, his new national security advisor, was to assume office. So what can we make of this?
It is actually a very interesting gesture of the President Trump, and I think the message was clear that he is in charge of this whole development. He will not be driven, I quote, by his advisors, especially State Department. And his style of talking and style of interaction with his advisor is quite similar to the way he did when he was CEO of the company. So if we put that scenario or situation into a private corporate setting, it's very normal that on the first day of hiring a board member, the CEO announced that his vision and his direction, and others will have to listen and adjust themselves to continue their employment.
Trump is definitely a businessman there.
That's right.
But then how might Trump's new top diplomats, including John Bolton, affect the upcoming summit between Trump and Kim, considering that many of them are actually hardliners when it comes to dealing with North Korea?
There's very important implication there. Even though I said that John Bolton and others will realize that he is now working for the President, U.S. President Donald Trump, they will carry a very vivid memory and experience of past negotiation, which has failed. So he will be reminded constantly on his negotiation with North Korea in coming weeks and months that if those gestures and messages from North Korea can repeat the same unsuccessful experiences of past negotiation. So it puts a hard burden on North Korea's side and others that the messages and actions and proposals have to be genuine, and repetition of past schemes will not work.
I mean, it seems that Mr. Trump is quite stern on his stance that those sanctions will stay, the pressure will stay, but he welcomes talking with Kim Jong-un, right?
Indeed, I think he's actually channeling all possibilities into the one direction that he wants to go. The continuation of very tough sanctions at the moment and hiring of John Bolton and others, and actually close down all other possibilities for North Korea and others that I want my way. And this is the way I will deal with.
Now, going back to the timing or the timeline issue, President Trump has said before that this Trump-Kim summit might happen sometime within May, but now June is on the options list as well. So what could have been some of the reasons behind such a delay, I guess?
I guess it's very normal. I myself was once working on the negotiation between two countries and others. And working on deadline or pin down a venue and date is one of the most difficult tasks to do. It also reflects that the decision of this summit when Jong Il-young visited Washington was made rather unexpectedly. It reflects spontaneous nature of this decision. So setting the clock from that moment, arranging all these summits, including security and everything, by the end of May was close to mission impossible. So extending a week or two, I think is very normal.
Understandable.
Yeah, understandable indeed.
All right. Now, as for the location of this upcoming summit between Trump and Kim, Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia, has been high on the list. I mean, we heard from CNN reports that Kim Jong-un actually wanted to hold this summit in Pyongyang, but then they found that Ulaanbaatar may be the best neutral ground for this to happen. So have there been any past cases where we saw summits take place somewhere other than where the leaders are from?
Actually, the first round of negotiation of two parties, which are considered as hostile, hardly take place in one of the capitals of two parties. Picking up the example of Palestine-Israel peace talk, you can imagine Israel-Palestine, the tension, level of tension, very, very high. Against all the wishes of hosting either in Jerusalem or Ramallah, the first meeting took place in Madrid in 1991. And after 2 years of discussion, it moved to Oslo, Norway, and it continued about 3-4 years. And the famous Oslo occurred when they signed a deal to agree to set up a two-state in Palestine territory, was in Oslo as well. So the place of neutrality often become a venue for the meeting. Now we have to see which are the place of neutrality, excluding Pyongyang and Seoul,
Right.
Beijing, Tokyo, or Moscow or Vladivostok.
And the U.S.
And the
of course.
U.S. has its pros and cons, and it gives some upper hand and a lower hand to a certain party. So Ulaanbaatar was interesting idea to me, but that reflects they want to find a place of neutrality.
And I heard that Ulaanbaatar kind of was aware of this, I guess, but then try to keep it low-key before the summit because of many security issues, obviously, too.
Indeed, and it will be, I'm still skeptical whether Ulaanbaatar will be an actual
really?
venue.
Okay.
My personal wish will be in our territory, place like Jeju, which
Okay.
we promote as a place of neutrality. Could be a very exciting venue, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the agenda now. I mean, where do the two sides stand when it comes to denuclearization, the U.S. and North Korea?
Well, if we give North Korea 100 years to denuclearize themselves, I think the chance is very high. They will sign if they have 100 years.
Right.
But Donald Trump, if we ask North Korea to complete its job within 2 years, meaning ahead of re-election of Donald Trump next year, most likely they will decline.
Okay.
So it will be a negotiation between 2 years and 100 years. And what's between? U.S. made it clear that they want complete, verifiable, and irreversible process or denuclearization process. North Korea, to my best knowledge, has not mentioned anything specific
Right.
in terms of denuclearizing themselves. So one side already put down their terms and conditions. Others are now defining themselves how to start the process and let it go and get something what they want and eventually agree on the same goal. So interesting time.
Right, but I mean, we're definitely hoping that things will be different this time compared to, I guess, Kim Jong-un's father and his grandfather times. But I mean, what are the chances, though, that North Korea would again demand for more economic aid and more security, especially from the U.S., and also less sanctions, I guess, because it's under enormous sanctions right now internationally.
Exactly.
So what are the chances that North Korea would make these demands in return for denuclearization?
I think it's almost certain that North Korea is now very busy in putting down or creating a list of their demand in terms of economic package. And to my best knowledge, U.S. and South Korean government and also try to have a package approach linking the nuclear issues and security issues with economic returns. Of course, it's a matter of proportionality, matter of sequencing and prioritization. For North, they want to get something in their pocket first before they initiate the process of denuclearization. That was exactly the agreement of the past.
Right.
So U.S. is unlikely to agree
repeat that mistake.
repeat that mistake. So it has to be at least a simultaneous action, if not more weight on security side. And my sense is that North Korea, facing such a harsh economic situation coming from sanctions, will be left with very few options in terms of creating its own demand without considering the request and demand from U.S. and South Korea.
Now, North Korea's Supreme People's Assembly, its rubber stamp parliament, opened today, and eyes are on what kind of policies may come out of that meeting, especially with these important summits coming up involving North Korea.
My expectation, given the nature of this summit, it's actually an annual summit that deals with everyday business for a country, such as reviewing the budget and approve the policy priorities for next year and what will be our priority outcome we need to achieve, all of that. So given the normal nature of this summit, mentioning two things I take back. Participation of Kim Jong-un on this meeting is a sign because he doesn't attend every time. He attends 6 out of 8 in the past. And then more interestingly, mentioning something of this nature, either summit between North and South or the summit between U.S. and North, will be a very interesting and important signal that he's not afraid of this become a public, because that's expectation high.
Okay.
Because failure to achieve certain outcome out of this summit, which has been announced in public, will put him a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So he seems to be confident that something will be coming out of this
Determined
too. Yes,
to get
exactly.
something out of this.
Exactly.
And now, senior Chinese diplomat Sung Tao is also set to visit Pyongyang with a large-scale performing squad to Pyongyang on Friday. Now, what are the chances that Kim Jong-un might meet with this Chinese diplomat? Because this is the first of its kind after Chinese President Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un met late last month.
Suddenly, Pyongyang has become a very popular venue for cultural events.
Yeah.
Given the paucity of such event in past 10 years is interesting. And the fact that Chinese has chosen to send their cultural delegation is also very interesting. Instead of military delegation, economic delegation, they choose cultural delegation. So I think the message is very, very subtle. We are with you in principles, but with certain terms and conditions. Therefore, China is with North Korea, but don't rock the boat at this time.
Now, we know that Ri Yong-ho, North Korea's top diplomat, and also former chief of North Korea's delegation to the six-party talks, went to Russia to meet with his counterpart. And obviously, you can see how Pyongyang's diplomatic offensive is continuing for sure before these summits. So what came out of the meeting there?
I think the most important meeting's outcome is acceptance of Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs to visit Pyongyang. Didn't mention the timing, but it gave a clear signal that Russia wants to have a good seat on the table. And Pyongyang also wants to bring global attention on Pyongyang, indicating or signifying that the world goes around the Pyongyang's clock.
Right. It needs to have its strong allies on its shoulders when it goes into that big room with the U.S.
Exactly.
Right.
And that put somehow interesting pressure on U.S. Because North Korea is very busy visiting Moscow, Beijing, and others, inviting those delegations, ministers, and culture team. On the other hand, U.S. has been playing rather solo. Best partner is South Korea.
Right.
But sooner or later, we can expect U.S. will also drum up its partners, such as Japan and South Korea.
All right. Well, for now, we'll see how the preparations go for the Trump-Kim summit, as well as the April 27th Inter-Korean summit.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you very much for having me.